In American environmental history, few figures are as influential as George Bird Grinnell. Born in the shadow of the 19th century industrial expansion, Grinnell's life was a remarkable journey that was thoroughly intertwined with the burgeoning American conservation movement. His contributions, ranging from the foundation of the Audubon Society to pivotal roles in the establishment of national parks and wildlife conservation, were fueled by a deep connection to nature forged in his early years. Here, we dive into the life and legacy of Grinnell, exploring how his background, experiences, and unwavering commitment shaped the contours of wildlife conservation here in the United States. Born in Brooklyn, New York, to George Blake and Helen Lansing Grinnell, he moved at the age of 7 to Audubon Park in Manhattan. This area, developed from the estate of noted ornithologist John James Audubon, likely influenced Grinnell's early interest in natural history. Grinnell's formal education at Yale University further solidified his academic foundations in natural sciences. Grinnell's experiences during his formative years were also crucial in developing his conservation ethos. After graduating from Yale, he joined an expedition of the Peabody Museum at New Haven to collect vertebrate fossils in the West. This exposure to the terrain, animals, and Native Americans of the Northern Plains had a profound impact on him. He participated in the last great hunt of the Pawnee in 1872 and studied the natural history of the region extensively. His involvement as a naturalist in Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer's 1874 Black Hills expedition and his work documenting wildlife poaching in Yellowstone in 1875 laid the groundwork for his future conservation efforts. These early experiences provided Grinnell with a unique perspective on the American West's natural and cultural landscapes. His exposure to the challenges of wildlife preservation and his interactions with Native American cultures were integral in shaping his lifelong dedication to conservation and advocacy for wildlife protection and ethical hunting practices. As editor of Field & Stream magazine from 1876 to 1911, Grinnell played a crucial role in advocating for wildlife conservation in America. His leadership transformed the magazine into a prominent voice against market hunting and for strict game laws. Grinnell's campaigns, particularly for the preservation of bison and the protection of Yellowstone's wildlife, were instrumental in the passage of landmark legislation like the Yellowstone Park Protection Act. Grinnell's editorial work extended beyond mere reporting. He actively used journalism as a tool to raise awareness and to drive action in conservation. He spotlighted critical conservation issues in the West, significantly shaping public perception and understanding. His tenure at Field & Stream exemplifies the power of media in the environmental movement, demonstrating how influential journalism can be in promoting environmental awareness and legislative change. His efforts set a precedent for media involvement in conservation advocacy, making him a pivotal figure in the early American conservation movement. Grinnell played a critical role in the conservation of big game and bison in America. His efforts began with a campaign to save the dwindling bison population in 1881, leading to significant conservation milestones like the Yellowstone Park Protection Act of 1894. His dedication to wildlife conservation was comprehensive, advocating for forest conservation and the establishment of national forests and Glacier National Park. Recognized for his commitment to ethical hunting and sportsmanship, Grinnell's work in wildlife and environmental conservation earned him the title of the Father of American Conservation. His efforts were instrumental in reversing the fate of bison and other big game species, contributing significantly to the broader movement of wildlife preservation here in the United States. Additionally, Grinnell's conservation efforts were interlinked with his support for Native American rights. As previously mentioned, he was a major proponent of preserving the few remaining bison in Yellowstone, understanding the cultural and spiritual significance to these animals to Native American tribes. Grinnell encouraged the U.S. Department of the Interior to find and protect animals outside the park, further highlighting his holistic approach to conservation that considered both ecological and cultural dimensions. His work in these areas was not just about preserving wildlife, but also about respecting and preserving the cultures and rights of the Native American tribes who had lived in harmony with these landscapes for centuries. As an ethnographer and author, he became a fierce advocate for several tribes in the American West, actively working against many brutal policies of the government that were genocidal in nature. His advocacy for Native Americans included efforts to secure reasonable treaties for tribes such as the Pawnee, Gros Ventre, and Cheyenne. This work showcased his complex philosophy concerning natural resources, emphasizing their proper management and preservation, and highlighting his commitment to respecting and understanding the cultural and environmental needs of indigenous communities. In 1886, as the editor of Forest and Stream, Grinnell, appalled by the mass slaughter of birds, urgently promoted the foundation of the National Audubon Society. His call for the protection of birds received an impressive public response. Within a year of its foundation, the early Audubon Society boasted 39,000 members who pledged not to harm birds. Grinnell's work with the Audubon Society and the Audubon magazine between 1886 and 1889 was transformative. He played a foundational role in raising awareness about the exploitation of avifauna and worked to propel forward the preservation of bird life. Although he became less visible after dissolving the Audubon Society in 1889, his efforts had a lasting impact, especially in raising women's consciousness about bird conservation. His foundational role in the society and his contribution to the preservation of bird life were a significant achievement of his career. In 1887, the Boone and Crockett Club was co-founded by George Bird Grinnell and Theodore Roosevelt as a response to the rampant destruction of wildlife in late 19th century North America. It represented a pioneering effort in wildlife conservation, focusing on balancing human needs with wildlife preservation and maintaining hunting traditions. Key to its legacy was the promotion of the fair chase hunting ethic, advocating for ethical and sustainable hunting practices. The club played a critical role in establishing the first national parks and wildlife management legislation, shaping America's conservation system. Grinnell's influence in the club was significant. He helped drive conservation efforts through legislation, research, and education, emphasizing a science-based approach to natural resource management. The club's ongoing impact includes sponsorship of research programs and symposia, and its vision remains steadfast in promoting conservation ethics, sustainable wildlife populations, and habitat protection. Grinnell's words from 1910 encapsulate the club's ethos: a continuous commitment to conservation and natural resource management, working discreetly yet effectively for the welfare of the country. As if everything mentioned previously isn't impressive enough, Grinnell's contributions to the establishment and advocacy of national parks in the United States are notable and significant. While he is less known compared to conservation leaders like John Muir and Gifford Pinchot, Grinnell's efforts were pivotal in the American conservation movement. In his campaign for Glacier National Park, Grinnell was inspired by the landscape of northwestern Montana, particularly the St. Mary Lake region. He explored this area extensively, developing a deep connection with its natural beauty and the plight of the southern Piegan Blackfeet and other tribes in the region. His advocacy for the park in his publication, Forest and Stream, along with lobbying efforts and collaboration with other conservationists, were instrumental in Congress establishing Glacier National Park in 1910. Grinnell's conservation work extended beyond Glacier National Park. He also supported the campaign for Mount McKinley National Park, now Denali, and advocated for the creation of the National Park Service. In reflecting on the monumental legacy of George Bird Grinnell, we are reminded of the profound impact one individual can have on the preservation of our natural world. Grinnell's life, a tapestry of relentless advocacy, scholarly rigor, and deep empathy for both wildlife and indigenous cultures, set a benchmark for environmental stewardship. His enduring contribution to the formation of national parks, the Audubon Society, and wildlife conservation legislation are testaments to his visionary foresight. Grinnell's story is not just a historical account, but a rallying cry, urging us to recognize our intrinsic connection to nature and to continue his valiant fight for the conservation of our planet's precious resources. His legacy beckons us to uphold the responsibility of safeguarding our national heritage for future generations, inspiring us to act with the same fervor and dedication that defined his remarkable life. Thanks for watching this episode of the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. I hope you learned something about George Bird Grinnell, and I got plenty more coming on the founding fathers of conservation, so stay tuned.